Welcome to Riding Counsel with Rich Jaffe, where the open road meets expert advice. I'm Richard Jaffe, an attorney and biking enthusiast, and this is the podcast where we dive into the world of motorcycling, safety, culture, charitable giving, and riding right. So, whether you're a seasoned rider or just getting started, let's talk bikes, the road, and everything in between. Let's ride! Hello, everyone in ridingcounsel.com podcast land. I am your host, Rich Jaffe. I am a lawyer and I am a podcaster here on ridingcounsel.com podcast, and I am a motorcycle enthusiast. I wanted to talk today with a very intelligent, articulate guest, and he's going to tell all of you about himself, but there's a topic that I've seen a lot in the news, and it's really disheartening. The first is motorcycle safety, and everybody has to be concerned about motorcycle safety anytime we ride. Everybody knows that, but there's a lot of road rage going on, and it's led to some dire circumstances, and it's not a good thing. And I wanted to talk about road rage. I don't think it's talked about enough, but first, please let me introduce my guest to you. Instead of me rattling off all about him, I wanted him to tell you all about himself. So welcome to the show. Who are you? Give us the 411. Where are you? What do you do? How do you do it?
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rich, for having me. My name is Valentin. I am a Motorcycle Safety Foundation instructor. I've been teaching for about 6 years. I teach in New York City at a motorcycle school, and I also teach in Jersey at the Bergen County Harley Davidson Riding Academy. I've been riding for about 38 years. In the last 6 years, kids grew up, been riding a lot more, trying to average 30 to 40,000 miles a year. Went to LA and back last year. I've had some good rides across the country, trying to balance that with the teaching schedule.
Oh, man, I love the way you say that. Yeah, right about, 40, 50,000 miles. Yeah, it's like nothing. I mean, I don't know if I ride that much on like one particular bike before I trade it in and get a new bike. That's crazy. That's amazing.
Well, I've had the good fortune of being able to work in the industry, and so attending rallies and events is part of the job. This year, I've already gone down to Daytona for Daytona Bike Week, and then I took a little more time, went down to Key West. On the way down to Daytona, I had the great honor and privilege of riding with Bill and Karen Davidson for a couple of days of Harley Davidson. So it's just really fantastic to ride with essentially Harley Davidson royalty.
Listen, if you love what you do at work, you're never going to work a day in your life. That's what they say, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Man, so I'd really like to try to dive right into this road rage, a really important topic that I don't think we talk about enough, especially on podcasts. But let's start at the beginning. Road rage. What do you feel is the definition of road rage? What is it?
I think there's a difference between aggressive driving and road rage. Aggressive driving is someone, it could be me, it could be somebody else. We're driving, you're driving fast, you're driving quick, you're making your way through traffic. You're really just picking a path. You're probably taking risk along the way, but you're just focused on making your way through. Road rage is an interaction between people, between individuals. It's you get into it with a car, you're going back and forth. I had my stepdad, great man. When I was about 15 or 16 years old, he one day I came home and he said to me, he said, "Son," he said, "be aware of the spirit of righteousness because it'll make you do stupid things." And I never forgot that. And there's something that happens when I'm in a vehicle, I'm on my motorcycle. When somebody cuts me off, I feel that they in some way disrespected me. They weren't a good driver. And there's a spirit that comes on where, you have the sense that you want to teach them a lesson, right? If we were stopped and having a conversation on the side of the road or over coffee, we would say, the conversation would be very different. But when you're in an environment where your adrenaline is moving and you're really in a very intense physical state and everything is happening, all of those emotions can get away from us. And that's usually what road rage ends up being. It's an interaction between two people or two vehicles.
I'd imagine that it happens to motorcyclists a lot because I know when I ride, it's it's amazing, right? I get into almost like a trance. I mean, not like I'm not like sleeping or with my eyes closed or something, but it's a really nice, pleasant feel. And then all of a sudden, if somebody cuts you off, it's like a shocking, like all of a sudden, right in your face. And I imagine that kind of plays a part in it too.
Absolutely. I think as a motorcycle instructor, one of the things that I talk to students about is the fact that motorcycles make up 3% of roadway users. That means that 97% of the vehicles on the road are cars or other types of vehicles, trucks, etc. And what happens is that there's another concept that comes into play, which is called inattentional blindness. So when we're familiar with something, we see it. So as motorcyclists, we see motorcycles wherever we go. I hear a bike, my head turns, swivels. I see it all the time. People that love me, like my mom, who doesn't ride motorcycles, she also sees motorcycles because she's looking for me, and she'll call me up sometimes and say, "I saw a pack of people riding by. Was that you and your friends?" I'm like, "No, I'm hours away." But the point is that most people, because they don't have motorcycle awareness, they don't see motorcycles. And so we have to ride with a strategy. I'm sure this has been said before and many people have heard it. We have to assume that we're invisible. I see a lot of YouTube videos where guys are riding along and somebody pulls into their path of travel, and they're so outraged that this person pulled into their path of travel as though it was personal or intentional, which in most cases it isn't. In most cases, the driver didn't have the awareness of the motorcycle being there. People have different strategies. Some riders will say that loud pipes will save their lives and certain things. I'm not going to get into that part of it, but what I will say is that presentation is a big part of it. Oftentimes we pass on the right, we pass in certain ways that puts us in the driver's blind spot to begin with. Couple that with their lack of awareness of motorcycles creates these situations where they move into our path of travel in ways that we find to be aggressive or offensive, which really wasn't their intent to begin with.
I chalk it up a lot to the fact that a lot motorcycles usually have one headlight, or if they have like two close together, it comes off as one headlight, as opposed to motor vehicles that have two or more headlights and they're spaced apart. So somehow it like doesn't register in the mind of drivers of cars and trucks.
It's absolutely true. The most common accident. So we have accidents in two places. Motorcycles have accidents in two places. We crash in curves. Usually we crash by ourselves because our entry speed, all of lane position, et cetera. Something wasn't right. We didn't get it right going into that curve. And in intersections, we crash with other vehicles. Those are the two most common places where we crash. In intersections, the most common accident between a car and a motorcycle is a car pulls left into your path of travel and you can't stop in time. So you're a lawyer. I'm not going to debate this, but whose fault is it? Right? Is it their fault that they pulled left into our path of travel, or is it our fault that we didn't have an ability to stop in time? And in those situations, what happens is that 9 out of 10 times when a motorcycle and a car collide, the driver will say they appeared out of nowhere. Right? We were coming right at them. We have our brain fills in a lot of gaps. So when we look at something and we see a massive object that is, coming down the road towards us, our brain says 18-wheeler truck. We don't have to look at it and go, does it have a cab? Does it have a trailer? Count the wheels. Oh, okay, it's an 18-wheeler. The way that we look at something, we immediately have a snap judgment about what it is. If there happens to be a motorcycle also within that field of view, the driver half the time or most of the time won't be able to pick it out as a distinct vehicle, which is one of the reasons why we end up in these situations where they pull into our path of travel and we are not able to manage the situation because we didn't go into that situation with an awareness of the potential risk.
Very well said, and you're 100% correct. Most of my motorcycle accident cases, and of course that's what I do as a personal injury attorney, it happens when a car makes a left-hand turn into the path of a motorcycle. It's the most, I'm going to say, popular way that an accident happens.
Yeah. Back to the road rage thing. I think, what I've discovered for myself is that once I start riding my motorcycle, part of the reason why I love riding motorcycles is because, while motorcycles are not inherently dangerous, they're just not very forgiving of inattention, lack of skill, aggressiveness. They don't forgive these things, right? So when I get on my motorcycle, I try to think about the ride that I'm going to have. And, we talked a little bit last week, but in preparation for this, the MSF teaches something called a pre-ride inspection. It's called T-clocks, and it's basically look over your motorcycle, look at the tires, look at the chassis, the stands, oil, lights, all of that stuff. By the way, just regarding lights, one of the things that I do when I get on my bike, any bike that I ride, I have a number of motorcycles, I always check the brake light because I only have one. Unlike a car, you have three. If one of your brake lights goes out on a car, you still have the other two. On a motorcycle, it's the only one. So just as a personal note to myself, I pay attention to whether my brake light's working. And I have to tell you, over the years of riding, there have been some times my brake light didn't work. So I had to ride very differently, really much more aware of what's happening behind me. But with that said, what the MSF doesn't have, and this is not a criticism of the MSF, but what they don't have is that, they don't have a mental or an emotional checklist. So I made one up, and it's called mindset. And it's just a way for me to check in with myself before I get on that bike. And M is for mood. What kind of a mood am I in? My mood is going to have a big impact on the type of ride that I'm going to have. If I'm happy and joyous, I might be a little carefree, which might be a little bit careless. If I'm stressed or anxious, I might be a little bit tight. And as we know, relaxation is the key to riding motorcycles well. And if I'm riding with tension or other things, my reaction times aren't the same. The next thing is I. I is for intention. There's two aspects to that. One is what is my intended ride? Where am I going? Why am I going on this ride? The second is, can I set an intention for myself as to the type of experience that I want to have? The next is N, which is nutrition or hydration or nourishment. Like, what have I put into my body? I know that when I'm hungry, when I'm thirsty, when I'm dehydrated, it affects a lot of my ability to ride well. It affects my reaction time. It affects my patience, all of those things. Also, I don't drink and ride. Like, it's pretty obvious, right? But I also, if you have had a drink, then maybe consider not getting on that bike, but also understand that that's in your system and it's going to affect what that ride is going to look like. So we have D. D is for distractions. I try to minimize the distractions that I'm riding with. So I do have motorcycles. I have a CVO Road Glide that has a beautiful sound system on it, and it has a big infotainment system and all of that stuff. I try to keep it on the simplest settings because what I want to do is I want to keep my attention on the road. And have I ridden with music? I do. Do I try to keep it at a level that allows me to still hear things? Absolutely. So minimizing distractions. Other things that could be distractions are emotional things that are happening at home, right? Anything that takes your attention away from the road, I make a commitment to myself to just put those things aside, maybe until the end of the ride. The next is skill set. I like to go through a quick mental checklist of the skill set that I will be using on that ride. What's the procedure for making a quick stop? Roll off the throttle, squeeze the clutch, apply the brakes, stay centered, look ahead, apply downshift to use engine braking. What's the procedure for a swerve? Two counter steers, a counter steer in the direction that you want to go, a counter steer to upright the motorcycle. If I have to cross an obstacle, what am I going to do? Give it a little bit of gas, stand up in the seat. Those are essentially the three main things. If something unexpected shows up in my path of travel, those are my three options, right? I can stop before I get to it. I could swerve around it, or depending on the situation, I could go over or through it. And so I just have a quick rundown of the skills that I'll be using. The next is environment. What's the environment like? Is it a beautiful sunny day? Is it raining? Those environments are going to have an impact on the type of riding that I will be doing. Is it 4:00 on a Friday afternoon trying to get out of Brooklyn? That's also going to have an impact. And the last one, really one of the most important ones for me, is T for time pressure. I ride very differently when I have time pressure. And that's one of the things that leads to potentially unsafe situations with other drivers, because if I'm in a rush and I'm trying to make my way through traffic, someone might perceive or feel that I'm being disrespectful to them in the way that I'm passing them, the way that I'm going around them. So if I just like real quick rundown, I don't always put all of them into play. If I could just 2 or 3 of those things, it changes my mindset before I get on that ride. A lot of people that ride motorcycles will tell you, ask guys that have been riding for a long time, you're like, hey, you ever get on your bike to clear your head? And they're like, yeah, all the time. I'm like, how about clearing your head before you get on the bike? It's a better strategy.
Yeah, so well said. And I love that. It's very easy to remember. And, every ride you prepare for, it really, the ride is so much affected by so many things before you even get on the bike.
That's right.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's say we do all we're supposed to do. We get out there on the road. Something happens. A car will cut us off unintentionally, or we don't know if it's intentionally or unintentionally, or maybe we piss somebody off by trying to. They think that we're racing by them, and in the meantime, we're getting out of their blind spot. What what do we do instead of raging or bringing on this road rage? What's an option for us?
Well, I think the first thing for me personally is I, I tend to move through traffic. We have a saying in motorcycling, it's called "ride your ride." So I ride my ride, and when I ride my ride, that means that I ride in a certain way, and I don't get pulled into other people's drama, right? I don't know what kind of day that guy's having. I don't know what's going on. I've gone past the guy. I pass a car, no issue. I pass another car, the guy is having an emotional reaction to something that I did, that he perceives that I did against him. So avoiding eye contact. That's probably, avoiding engagement. And it starts with eye contact. It starts, there's two ways that this comes up in the class sometimes. We talk about honking, right? Honking at other roadway users. And so there is a place to honk, right? To alert someone to the potential of an accident, right? You're just bringing their attention to it. You honk, like maybe they didn't see it. But a lot of the time what people honk and use other gestures is to express their displeasure with the other person's driving technique or style. And so for me, there's right there's like a big distinction. If I honk after something has happened, right, that's usually an expression of displeasure. If they honk at me after I've gone past them, I don't have to slow down and engage with that. I'm already out of there. I've already moved on. I'm somewhere else. I tend to, we're motorcycles, so we tend to move a little bit easier through traffic. We don't even have to speed. Just by virtue of the size of the vehicles and the power that they produce, we're able to filter through traffic a little easier than cars do. And sometimes people don't like that. They feel that we should ride with a different, on a merging or any of those things. They feel that there's a certain etiquette and we should follow the etiquette because it's what they follow. If they try to engage with me, I usually look to move away. If they're aggressive with me, I'll fall back. I'll move out of the way. I'll just let them go, and because I want to ride my ride and I want to get to where I'm going in a safe manner, and I want to enjoy to ride it another day. Getting into it with a car is like literally like showing up with a knife to a bazooka fight, right? The guy's got a bazooka, you got a knife. You're never going to win, right? And so the best thing to do is just to let it go and just to keep moving on.
I think that's the best policy: de-escalation, or even avoidance, if you can do it. Those are really some great pointers and tips. I'm wondering if you have heard of anything while you're on a motorcycle that might indicate that a driver of a car or a truck might start engaging in some sort of road rage incident before it actually happens. Have you seen any indicators like that?
Well, so one of the places that I teach in the Bronx. So yesterday I was teaching in Staten Island, just environmentally very different places, right? In Staten Island on the range, we had deer running across the range. In the Bronx, you have a different kind of activity going on around the range and all of that stuff. But one of the things that in particular I've experienced in the Bronx, I'm sure it's true for the other boroughs as well, is some very aggressive driving. And so you could see them. I'm riding, when I ride my motorcycle, I'm very aware of what's happening in front of me because that's what's important, but I constantly check what's happening behind me. And you could be on the Major Deegan or on the Bruckner somewhere and you're riding along and you could see them coming, right? 2 or 3 guys racing along, going super fast. And you know that they're just looking for more people to engage. That's been my experience. It appears to me that they're just looking for more people to engage with that. And when I see that happening, whether I'm in my car or my motorcycle, mostly on my motorcycle, I'll just give them a lot of room to do that. The second thing is there's certain indications, like so erratic driving, switching lanes without signaling. When you get close to someone, if they're speeding up and slowing down, if they're trying to keep pace with you in some engaged way, that's usually an indication that it's going to start escalating. You already have sometimes when another motorist, once you have their attention, you become the focus of whatever they have going on emotionally. You don't know what it is. They just might be having a bad day. And this is an easy way for them. It's much easier to deal with you in a road rage way than to deal with their divorce, right? So they just funnel all of that stuff into it. And you could see it because usually it just starts out with they're getting close to you, they're tailgating you, they're doing some things. And, there's a tendency to want to respond to that and engage with it. But what I remind myself is, I go back to the intention that I set for the ride that I want to have. And my intention is to ride safe, ride within my limits, use certain skills. And that's one of the ways that it allows me to disengage from it. And really, the more engaged I am, the more it escalates. Like, ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's really very well said. I mean, it comes down to intentions before you ride, but then when you're riding, remember those intentions so you get home. I mean, everybody wants to enjoy themselves and have a good ride, but I think we really have to control ourselves inside and make sure that we live true to our intentions that we set before the ride even happens.
Yeah, and also with that, in that line of thinking, I've had the good fortune of teaching a lot of law enforcement, local law enforcement, state troopers, local PD, Jersey sheriff. And I always ask them how they relate to motorcycles on the road. Like, what are you looking for? And the common answer across the board is, if you don't want my attention, don't ask for it. So if I see you riding with no gear, going 120 miles an hour, and you have a super loud motorcycle and you're weaving in and out of traffic, you're asking for my attention. I'm going to give it to you. And it's the same strategy with other drivers. If you don't want their attention, don't ask for it. And that's a great way to just ride your ride.
So a lot of times what I hear from my other fellow bikers is that, this car started up with me, this crazy cage tried to kill me and run me off the road, when they don't seem to consider the fact that maybe it's something the motorcyclist actually did unintentionally, that the driver of the car or the truck took the wrong way. And I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about those kinds of scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's ways that we can communicate displeasure, but there's also ways that we can communicate our intention with other. So one of the things that I do is I just use my turn signals. It's kind of a simple thing. I ride with some guys occasionally, and we have, when people don't use their turn signals, like, if you don't do it in your car, you don't do it, you don't do it. It's okay. It's like, I'm going to be aware of you, but it's just, I try to use everything that's available to me to communicate in a friendly, cooperative way with other drivers. So ultimately, like, we could just start with turn signals. You're switching lanes, you're moving over into a lane, and use your turn signal. Somebody might take offense if you don't do that. It's kind of a very simple thing. On some of the bigger bikes, I know that when we downshift, the engine braking slows the motorcycle down quite a bit. I'm in the habit of tapping my brakes whenever I downshift to let the driver behind me know. Usually what happens is that people react to being startled. And it's the perception of danger that even though nothing happened, right? Nothing happened, but it's the perception of danger that puts them in a heightened emotional state. So if we can minimize that by communicating well prior to getting into those interactions. Now, once we're there, we're very limited in terms of the options that we have. We need to disengage from that person as quickly as possible. A lot of the times what riders are going to do is they're going to speed up because they're going to think, I'm going to get away from this guy. Now you just gave them something to chase. So unless you're skilled and you're really able to make your way through traffic in such a way, they're taking that as a challenge, right? A lot of people on the road feel challenged and then they feel disrespected. So they have to show up and, their ego takes over and they have to beat you in some way. Another way to do it is simply just disengage from that ride, allow them to move on and find an alternate route. I mean, that's that's a lot of pride to swallow. And I know it's hard when that happens, but I think it's a very effective strategy. Just go, oh, this person's having a bad day. I'm going to go over here and let them go over there. If you can get away, if you can move away from them, do it, but you don't always have to move away from them forward. You can always move away from them by dropping back as well.
I always find blind spots are a little tricky for me because I never want to be in anybody's blind spot when I'm riding. I sort of try to make sure that I could see them and they could see me in their side mirrors and things like that. But sometimes I've heard that people who are trying to get out of the blind spot are taken by cars maybe as a challenge because they're either speeding up or something like that to try to get by the car, or doing some other funny maneuver to get out of the blind spot. Have you heard things like that?
Well, absolutely. So I've had I've ridden through Europe. So I went to the UK, rented a motorcycle, went up to Wales, all the way through France, etc. Driving culture there is very different. They really adhere to the keep right pass left or keep left pass right, depending on the side of the road that they're driving on. Here in the United States, we don't do that. So this is one of the challenges that we have. I just know a lot of drivers that are not very skilled who will get in their car and they'll sit in the left lane because they believe the left lane is the safest lane for them to be on. And now you're passing them on the right. I had a motorcycle cop that I've worked with who told me, he said, if you want to minimize your potential for accidents on the road, don't pass on the right. Just don't pass on the right. So now that puts us in an interesting position, right? Do we either slow down and sit behind that car in the left lane, or do we pass them on the right? And it's usually when we pass them on the right that we're going past them. Sometimes they're a little bit startled. And so two things we can do, right? One is we can steer clear, like just give them a little bit more room. Generally, the riding position when you're riding is, especially like when you're riding in a group or anything like that, is you're riding, the first rider is you're riding where the driver would be. The next rider rides over to the right of the first, right? So left position in the lane. And so sometimes I see people going past cars. They're in the left lane, they're going past cars, but they're in the right position of the lane and they're actually going quite close to that car. And they're going at a speed they're not slowly pulling up on it. They're going 20, 30 miles faster than that car. And when they do that, the driver, you could see the driver, if I'm in a position where I can see the driver, you see the driver kind of jump and get startled a little bit. So one thing that we can do is we can give them a little bit more space when we go past them. And the second thing is, pay attention to the speed that we're going past them. And if we are going to go past them a little bit faster, and then just steer even further, steer a little bit more clear of them.
We're talking a lot about what I feel can be termed driving our motorcycles defensively, but I think also it's important to be predictable when we drive our motorcycles. So can you maybe distinguish between the two and talk to us a little bit about the importance of being predictable when we're out on the road?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the MSF, we teach presentation. We say, where are you in relationship to other cars and how do you present yourself? Now, presentation can be something, the first thing is we talk about is gear, having visibility with your gear, being presentable. The other thing is where we are in relationship to other cars. So part of being predictable is there's an etiquette. We drive, depending on where you are in this country, the etiquette is different. I'll just give you an example. In New York, if I'm at a green light waiting to make a left turn, it's acceptable for me to pull halfway into that intersection and wait for the oncoming traffic to pass before I make my left turn. I was in rural Oregon and I did that with some buddies that were riding, and they always said, no, you don't do that. That's not acceptable etiquette there. You have to wait at the line while you're making a left turn until all that traffic clears before you pull into the intersection. So part of it is knowing a little bit about the local etiquette, but the other part of it is just riding with respect for other drivers. And one of the things that we do when we ride is pick a lane position, stay in that lane position. Sometimes I see people moving all over the lane. That creates a sense of uncertainty for the other drivers around you. If you can hold and maintain a good lane position throughout your whole ride and a good and consistent speed, those things are predictable. If you use your turn signals, you are communicating your intention with other drivers. So I agree with you. I think that being predictable creates a sense of ease and comfort for the other drivers. We don't want to surprise them. We're already an anomaly in some way, right? We're on the road. We have these machines that have an ability to move really fast and to make these changes in directions very quickly. So if we can act like cars when we're around cars, then I think that we can reduce the surprise factor for other drivers, and we could have a more serene drive for everyone.
You really give us a lot of helpful information, useful information, and practical information. And I hope it helps a lot of our listeners. I'm unfortunately running out of time for this episode. But before we go, if somebody has any further questions, first of all, if you like the content that you're hearing and listening to and watching, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, share. I need more followers. The more followers I get, the word gets out. But I also wanted to give you a chance to tell everybody out there, if they have any further questions for you, how does somebody get in touch with you?
Well, honestly, the best way and the easiest way these days is just to find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is HIVIZ Valentine, High Viz Valentine. And as I said, I teach at Bergen County Harley Davidson Riding Academy. Brandy, she's the riding academy manager there. She's amazing. And if you want to learn how to ride in Jersey, you can reach out to her. And the other thing that I want to say is, I'm just really quick, I'm working on something. Making the transition from the parking lot to the street is a big step. In the MSF pro curriculum, when we teach people how to ride in 2 days that have never ever ridden, the best that I can hope for is I could teach you how to operate a motorcycle. Teaching you how to ride a motorcycle, that's going to take a lifetime for you to pursue that development of skill. But one of the things that I just started making them, and I don't know, maybe I'll make them available on my Instagram or some other way. In New York City, we're seeing all these stickers that say, "New driver, please be patient." I've made these high vis vests that just say "New rider, please be patient." So in Europe, in England, if you're a learner, you get an L on your plate. And so that lets other drivers know what your skill level is. And so they're a little bit more patient with you. And I think we could benefit from having something similar like that here in the United States. And I want to see all the new riders make the transitions to being old riders. And I think this is one of those things that might help that. And so I'll probably make those things and probably, put them out on my Instagram profile or something like that at some point. So again, High Viz Valentine on Instagram is probably the best way to find me.
All right. And I'm going to put all that information for all you watchers on YouTube. I'm going to put it all down here in the comments. And I'm also going to try to flash it for you on the editing after I edit this. And so if you have any questions, and also if you have any questions for Valentine, you can always get in touch with me. Again, I'm Rich Jaffe at ridingcounsel.com, RIDINGCOUNSEL.com. You can always get me. I'm Rich Jaffe. I'm a podcaster. I am a motorcycle accident attorney, and I am a motorcycle enthusiast. So I want to thank you very much for coming. You really shared a lot of great information. I appreciate it. And I think that's going to do it for this episode. So I want everybody out there to ride wild, ride free, ride safe, and, do it in a legal way. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Rich.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Riding Counsel with Richard Jaffe. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your fellow riders. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and ride safe.